Hey everybody, it's Thomas. It's BBLoBB time. Season just wrapped up. Finals were played today. And overall winner goes to Jessup. My predictions were all kinds of bad here. This one was wrong. This ended up being a huge, long slugfest of a game. It was like almost an hour and a half. Like 24 turns, I think. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. I don't know. Tie game until the end, and then superior rerolls and fewer need for rerolls won out, and more removal, I guess. Kind of the short form for it. This thing, Mark got beat up early on, was never able to recover. Norse class cannon problems, basically. 2 over Jessup. Going to the finals, pretty straightforward, actually. Jessup received the ball first, got a touchdown in relatively early, and then was able to squirrel the ball away from Andrew. Made it 2-0, and then Andrew never really recovered, and I think he tilted a little too hard, but is what it is. So congratulations, Jessup, for being our overall league champion for Season 4. Another Skaven win that makes 2 Skaven victories, which is pretty impressive. Still pretty good overall. Let's get into the fun things now, which is, you can look at our top 4 here. But we're going to do the number talk. I love me some number talk. I've been doing it all season, but now it's like super number talk time. We're going to start things off with the Chaos team, our 4th place team, which is Grey Duck. I don't know. I think a bunch of things happened with this team, but the biggest story overall, I would say, is the Chaos Warriors didn't get leveled up early enough. And then she lost Beastman at a permanent level at a pretty, not consistent basis, but at key moments. Like, yes, these are only 2s, but when these pieces were lost, they were... I mean, losing these pieces means you're losing SPP. Even if it's 0 to 5, you're still losing SPP. It means these Beastmen can't really come in to support the Chaos Warriors effectively. I would say, too, just not... The Chaos Warriors not getting SPP early enough means that they couldn't help get the Beastman farm and all that fun stuff. Biggest player, obviously, Smiley did a lot of work. We'll talk about all that. We flip over to number mode. Wacha! So, thought I'd show you the spreadsheet this time around, because it makes it a little easier, I think, to hear what I'm talking about. So, absolutely great season for Grey Duck, though. I think she played extremely well. Just, she lost when she didn't need to. Second most touchdowns in the leagues overall. 30 touchdowns total. Absolutely phenomenal. Not a lot of passing, as you can see. Fair amount of running, though. Third highest amount of yards run, which is pretty good. A fair amount of removal, but not a ton. Only losing out for lost by 1, let's say, KO or casualty, depending which column you want to weight harder. But yeah, didn't win in either of those and just falls a little bit short on all of that. Most tackles, those teams ran away from this team quite a bit. Only tackled 14 times, which is pretty good. 3 agility dodges were very successful this season. Casualties given up, only 34, tied for first that point as well. Second fewest KOs as well, for a total of the second fewest number of players lost at 82 total. Fewest touchdowns given up by a huge margin as well, only 10 touchdowns. Excellent defense this season, and very good drive efficiency, which is not exactly an accurate term for it, but how easy it was for her to move the ball forward was pretty good. 0.0277 yards for every touchdown or touchdowns per yard run, pretty phenomenal. And while didn't post up the highest, the combination of not losing that many players and then doing a fair amount of damage means that she has the second best casualty exchange rate, essentially highest amount of money, given overall. And we flip back over to the game screen. Didn't really spend too much of it. Slightly more than half, or no, a lot more than half, I should say. Still waiting to be applied. I mean, I don't blame her. Not all these pieces got removed, and the ones that get removed didn't add that much team value, and there's not a lot of room down here to add more team value. Other fun things here, on an average basis, not too much changes. Yeah, pretty much all these numbers stay the same. Yep. So, pretty good. Quick look at deaths. Only 3 deaths total, but they were pretty significant, so second fewest deaths overall. Let's see here. Oh, didn't assign this one. Well, let's look at it. This color. And then... Sorry, doing math on the fly here. Anyway, whatever, not math, data entry. But yeah, did pretty well. 1.5 players killed for every player lost is pretty good. Average matches is kind of a new thing I was tracking this season, which is just the average matches of your players. So if we take a look at this here, what this tracks is this column here, the matches played. This tracks churn, basically missed next games, new hires, replacement players, things like that. So overall, very, very, very sturdy team. That's reflected in the loss category, but it's nice to have another dimension to look at that. Average matches played of 16.38 out of a total of 21. You can see most of your players stuck around for most of it. Really good. Touchdowns scored for touchdowns lost ratio there. 3 is a pretty good number. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, I don't know. MVP goes to Smiley. That shouldn't be too big of a surprise if you've heard me talking about this piece overall. 25 pieces removed is a pretty big deal. It's such a huge leap and bound above everything else. It kind of doesn't matter that it didn't score that many touchdowns. I was leaning a little bit towards Lyack for MVP simply because this piece scored 6 touchdowns and removed 11 pieces. But considering how this team plays, removing 25 pieces is kind of more impactful. Big part of Smiley's success, getting block early, getting the Claw Mighty Blow combo, really, really good. All these things, pretty good. Guard might not have been the ideal choice, I think, in the long term, or in the end, but Smiley did very, very well, and only lost out on a few matches due to being pretty aggressively targeted, because this is a big piece that's a threat, so can't blame anybody for doing so. But yeah, I mean, basically, Griddick had a pretty good season, just didn't manage to close things in when needed to. Few losses overall. Just when she did lose, it was for the elimination stuff. So that is a bit unfortunate. Okay. Let us move on to, I believe I am next. So sorry for me. Well, it's a couple ways to look at this. I feel like, I don't know how good this team is. I don't want to blame the tools, though, because I feel like I played pretty well. And obviously I went undefeated in the group stage, so the regular stage, not the group stage. The group stage was a disaster. But I think much like Griddick, I lost when... or I didn't win, rather, when I needed to. Yeah, lost here, and a bunch of ties. I mean, I think it's one of those things where early advantage and positioning, things like that, gets decayed a little bit as people pick up more skills. And I didn't hit very hard. Let's go to the numbers. I think that just demonstrates this pretty well. This is the window we want. That's a preview. It's a sneak preview. A trailer for what's to come when we talk about league trends. Touchdown scored, third most touchdown scored, 26, pretty good. My offense was really nice. Not a lot of passing, much like a lot of people in this league, but almost identical numbers to Griddick, in fact. Second best running, so second most yards run, means I wasn't very efficient in my running, if you look at how those numbers play out. No kills, very few casualties, not a lot of KOs, and just overall, not a lot of removal. So overall, I have the second worst amount of removal in the league, considering how much hitting this team should be able to do and how much damage this team has the potential to do once it gets going. That's kind of the problem. This team is not very strong. If you take a look at some stats here, I mean, yes, the Bloodthirster is very, very, very good. But everyone else, kind of average. 3 strength across the board, 3 agility, mostly okay armor. But I just wasn't able to do it overall. The stats aren't that good, so I'm not removing pieces. It's hard for me to gang up on other teams and bully them. Part of this, too, there's a lot of strength and guard in the league. I think it was less of that, or less prominent might have been okay, but the fact of the matter is I just lost a bunch of players. Didn't get tackled very often, but I did eat a lot of casualties, and I did eat a lot of KOs, although apparently the third fewest KOs, which surprises me a little. This number can't be right. Whatever, we'll get into that in a little bit. Apparently it is right. But yeah, when I gave things up, I gave it up a little bit. So 121, I mean, I'm in the top 4, it looks like. I'm in the top 4 for players lost. It's just the combination of, well, here, we'll go to this chart number here. The combination of between not removing many players and then not losing, and then losing a fair number of players is kind of the problem. There it kind of flips, and I go to the lower half by quite a bit. There's a big gap between the top 4 and the bottom 4 for the casualty exchange rate, essentially. third most of my money. I did definitely spend that money. Part of that is the ridiculous cost of the Bloodthirster, but I did go through a few players, as you can see. So that's part of it, although most of my deaths happened later on. Other fun things to look at. Averages don't really change too much around, I guess. My average tackles look, or the amount of times I was tackled looks pretty bad, I guess, at that point. I don't know. Yeah, not a lot changes here whatsoever. I guess my yard efficiency goes up and is apparently the best. Huh. Weird. Averages. They're strange things. But yeah, that went up pretty well. And then, yeah, money doesn't change very much at all there. 5 deaths. Bam. Third fewest overall, but not saying a lot there because 3 teams all tied for second. I didn't kill anybody at all. I'm the only team that didn't remove anybody. So the exchange rate for the lives of my players, the lives of others is 0. Not that great. I don't know, 12.17 matches as the average played. I think that goes to what I was talking about before of when I got removed, it was very frustrating. I'd replace a lot of players and then didn't really get anywhere. MVP for me goes to the only player I have, and actually everybody has one player that did this, but the only player I have that managed to play in every single one of my games, all 20 of them, Belly the Doilies, my Block Mighty Blow piece. I didn't think it was going to be this piece. I honestly thought it was going to be somebody else, but I forgot how many touchdowns I had scored with this piece. 5 touchdowns total. She caught 3 passes, 4 casualties, 3 KOs. So 7 removal isn't necessarily as good as Betty's 21, but I don't think removal is really what this team is designed to do, because this doesn't count surfing or anything like that. It's a good like isolation and positioning control team, but that's about all it does. It pushes people really well, and that's kind of it. It doesn't hit extremely hard, it just hits a lot. Almost gave it to Stickers for Men, but Stickers for Men has the same number of touchdowns and fewer removal, so it was a pretty easy choice. Also, I mean, I guess you could argue Stickers for Men was more impactful in all of the games it was in, but Belly Doilies overall, I think, was just my MVP. Did more damage overall, did more for me, tackled 3 people, bam. Good enough for me. We'll call it the best. But yeah, basic story for me is I just, my inability to remove pieces through either bad luck or just lack of opportunities created by myself means that I couldn't really put enough pressure. And then when I got removed, it was pretty powerful. And also, again, I lost a lot when I needed to win. These things happen. Okay, let's move on to our next team, which looks like it's Mark's team. Good old Norse. Story for Mark's team is pretty much the Norse classic. Early TV, a lot of domination, did extremely well. And then as other people started to pick up skills, the lack of like guard doubles or any real extra benefit meant that Mark's development didn't really happen. Also, I'd say losing Pierce a lot didn't help either. Let's take a look at Mark's numbers here before we go too crazy on themes and things like that. Kind of generic. Pretty good touchdowns. Top 4 for touchdowns. Fairly solid amount of running. Has one of our 2 interceptions. Most kills. This is where we can see the Norse team doing its thing. This huge removal section right here. 7 kills, 58 casualties, 75 KOs for a total of 133 players removed. Absolutely stunning how much damage this team could put out when it was firing. And that's, I think, the big thing here. When it was working, excellent. Super good. When it wasn't, and when it got hurt, it stayed hurt, and it did not come back in a game. Tackled a fair amount, did not get tackled a fair amount. This is people running away from Mark. Frenzy also gives you not a lot of options for following people, or from running away. But in this kind of, we can see 139 players lost. More than me, but not by a lot. I don't know. That's kind of part of it too. Mark's defense is very good though. 20 touchdowns given up. Really, really good. Good drive efficiency as well. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Good exchange rate. The 3rd best exchange rate for removal and given up. And considering how many pieces Mark lost, that's pretty impressive. Like if you look at Great X team, which we've already talked about, only lost 82 players. So it's not that hard to have a really good amount of removal for players removed. Mark almost hits an equivalent exchange with losing that many players. That is incredible. 2nd highest amount of money given up, and Mark definitely needed it. I mean, he didn't spend some of it, partially by choice, but with the amount of players getting turned over, even with how cheap these players are, these problems are going to start to add up, and they are problematic. I don't know. I think losing Pierce is probably the big thing for him, because the first time Pierce got killed there, or I think it was my strength death thing, whatever, he was already level 3. And so Shirley made it to level 4 without too much work. So within much fewer matches, right? Actually, Shirley was in 20 matches. Okay, ignore me. But Shirley made it to level 4 and was behind where Pierce was. So if Pierce had kept going, odds are Pierce probably would have been scraping up around level 4 a lot earlier. Maybe that would have made a big difference for how this team impacted. Maybe he could have gotten tackle on this piece earlier. There's a lot of factors that could have gone in. Removing key pieces when they have a lot of SPP is a huge problem. It's one of the things I want to check next season, is SPP levels as they go up and down. That'll help us get a better picture, I think, of how a team is doing. Other fun facts for Mark's team, I guess. On an average, killed a third of a player every single game. Pretty crazy. Moved around 6 players every single game. Like I said, when this team was hitting, it didn't stop hitting, and it hurt a lot. Just played really well. It's a glass cannon team. When it's working great. When it's not, it's really bad. Tied for the most amount of deaths in the league overall. Average of a third of a player dead per game is pretty scary. I don't know, but despite all that, has one of the best exchange rates, just because he killed so many things. Absolutely phenomenal. 12 matches average. Like I said, that's kind of the story of this team. Players kept getting removed. Not very fun. I guess I haven't really talked about this column that much. You can look at it if you want, but running versus passing is just the ratio for how often you're running the ball over passing the ball. Kind of measures offensive variety, I guess, but is what it is. As you can see, it's in bold already. MVP goes to Abed. There's not really a lot of choices when I looked at the numbers. Wanted to give it to the Dean, maybe just because it's the Dean, but dead. And MVP has to go to a living player. And even then, a big part of the reason Mark posted up such phenomenal removal numbers is this piece. Abed killed 2 people. Just 23 casualties, 22 KOs. It's a staggering amount of removal for one piece, and it's incredible. A touchdown as well. Abed did a whole lot of everything, and he did it extremely, extremely well, so can't ask for more. When he did get injured, it hurt, and he definitely missed some games because of it, but still, Abed is the star of this team. Did just super, super well. Absolutely great. Okay. Moving on to our second place team. We've got Chaos Dwarfs to talk about. Andrew's team was kind of weird. He didn't have that great of an early season. And then the toughness of this team kind of caught up with it. It did extremely well and kept going and kept building on itself. To put this in perspective, if you've been following us at all, you'll know that this is a very death-enriched season. And Andrew was the only team to not give up any dead players for the entire season until the last matchup, and then lost his Minotaur, which I think is kind of appropriate, all things considered. Yes, it wasn't a casualty that someone else inflicted on him, but I'll take what I can get. I say this is a player who didn't kill anybody, so hey, I'll take what I can get. Yeah, I don't know. Just this team posted up a lot of numbers. Let's take a look at them. Yeah, not a lot of touchdowns scored. Kind of the opposite of Great here. When Andrew scored touchdowns, it mattered. He tied for third for fewest touchdowns given up, which is important. And I think that's kind of, here we go, this one. And that's kind of the balance, right? You've got a few touchdowns scored, but few given up. So we had a lot of like 1-0 games. That's kind of a product of how slow that team is. But yeah, not a lot of passing, not a ton of running, as might be expected for a team that didn't score many touchdowns. Still, tied for second most kills, highest number of casualties, second place for KOs, barely losing out to Mark for most players removed. Yeah, 129, phenomenal. 35 tackles. I mean, starting with tackle will help a little bit with that, but not a lot of dodge in there. And then this is the resiliency check. And Dwarves win this all the time because they've got thick skull and they've got 9 armor value. This is to be expected, but still. It's one of the reasons why this team is so good at hitting. It's not so much that it has hitting skills, and it definitely does. It had piling on the Minotaur. It had a fair amount of mighty blow. it's so tough. It's hard to remove, and when you don't get removed, you stay on the pitch, you contribute to blocks, you hurt people. It's great. So, fewest number of times tackled. He wasn't really running away from people because why would he bother? Fewest number of casualties tied with chaos. Fewest number of KOs. A lot of this is probably due to Thick Skull. And if tracking the stuns wasn't such a hassle, I'd do that too. But it's a huge hassle, so I'm not going to do it. Also, fewest number of players removed by a large margin. And I'm sure the Thick Skull had a big part of that. But still, it's a big deal. Defended well. Has one of the best casualty exchange rate by far. Just stunning amount of casualties removed. Didn't make a lot of money, and this is kind of the resilience thing I was talking about before. When you aren't losing that many players, you don't need to replace them, so it really doesn't matter that much. Andrew's treasury is low because he blew it on getting a Morgan Thorg in his playoff game against Greyduck. Probably a good choice, but whatever. The important part here is this team just had a ton of money and could do it, and even getting a 4th reroll he didn't really need. That's just how well things were going for him. But in the end, lost out when he needed to not lose out. Averages don't really change too much, kind of as we've seen, but they do give us some fun things here. Ends up tying for 2nd for most kills. Keeps that. Drops to 3rd for KOs. Average KOs goes somewhere else for the numbers there. Says it's 2nd here. Yeah, I think that's the only number that changes. Oh, I guess touchdown given up, he moves to 2nd place for that. And yeah, if we look down here, only 1 dead player. And that happened right at the end. So pretty phenomenal there. Yeah, just great. 21 matches played. So this is the average number of matches this team has played. And this is the highest. This is like the most games a lot of people have played. So, I mean, yeah, Andrew went really far, and that's part of it. But when your average matches played score is higher than the number of games most people played, you had a very, very tough team. And, you know, as you can see, he had players miss out, and this is without the Minotaur, who wasn't in the entire season. The team was very tough, didn't give up a lot of injuries, and was able to build and create terrifying works of death and destruction. MVP on this one goes to Gatan Ironback, which is here. This was unfortunately missed the finals due to a smash knee, but just did the most. Got a touchdown, 4 MVPs, caught a pass too, which is kind of crazy. But the Minotaur gun, I just felt most comfortable giving it to this piece. 12 casualties, 9 KOs. Just did good. Just did a lot of good. Overall, only injured once, and it was a very significant injury. But hey, MP goes to this Chaos Dwarf blocker because it did a lot of damage. It might have gone to the Minotaur, but Minotaur is dead, and we can't give MP trophies to things that are dead. All right, let's move on here. We're gonna talk about vampires now. We're gonna do this very briefly because I'm pretty sure no one wants to talk about this team ever again. Chris hated it. It was not always fun to play against or play it at all. Chris's videos are an escalating series of frustration, to say the least. Basically, Chris's vampires did vampire things, and then they didn't develop, and then they just let him down over and over and over again. Let's take a look at some numbers here, because he actually did post up some pretty impressive numbers here. Fewest touchdowns. Part of this is not playing that many games, but also his vampires being uncooperative jerkbags. 4 agility shining here for the 3rd best for just passing yardage, passes, catches, all that fun stuff. Has one of the other interceptions in the league, and actually had the 3rd highest kills. This surprised me, but then I remembered when Chris's vampires got angry, they really killed things. We'll talk about that a little bit more here. Actually had the 3rd highest KOs, which again surprised me a lot, but punched hard, I guess. 87 players removed. Not the lowest, but not certainly. Well, no, it's the 5th place, so not that great. Not that many tackles. Lost just an ocean of people in a lot of ways. A lot of these numbers are kind of skewed too because of Bloodlust, but that's part of it. When you lose Bloodlust, a lot of bad things happen. A lot of people scored touchdowns on Chris because of that. Did make a fair amount of money. Starting with a lot much fan factor early on will definitely help. As you can see here, tied for me for 3rd there. Averages get a little weirder too. Some of these stay the same, but then because he played fewer games, best interceptions, basically. Keeps third KOs, but actually moves to the best, or kills, but moves to the best KOs overall because of how few games he played. So again, when Chris played, he hurt a lot. Moves to third best average removal as well, which is kind of insane considering how much he beat himself up. Lost an average of 9 players a game, which is kind of crazy. And this is just a KOs and casualties, obviously, but still, that's really, really crazy. It's a big jump up from like the 6s that most people post up. There's some exceptions that you can see right below it if you're peeking, but yeah. Yeah, get a lot of touchdowns. Pretty good running, though. When he did get the ball and moved it, he usually got a touchdown for it, which is pretty good. And then moves to best for overall games played. This number is a little skewed, and I should put a footnote or asterisk against everybody that was in Group 1 because Kristen plays his last 3 games. So, and I had to count the money because it is impactful for the teams that remained, but it doesn't matter that much for Chris, I guess, overall. I mean, he wasn't spending his money except to buy more thralls, and then he just stopped playing, so it didn't matter. Vampires, 6 dead, so he stayed out of mark, but just barely. I think if he played more, he probably would have added more to that pile. I wanted to look at a couple things here because this really fascinated me. So, as a percent of casualties received, whatever, but Chris is actually the only one to come close to having a accurate statistically amount of percent casualties killed. So this column here is the number of the percentage of your blocks that resulted in a skull being given up. And so 1 in 6 once you get to that injury roll. So Chris is the only one that's even close. The rest of us are in terrible town. For me, it's 0 because I suck. But everybody else, you know, next closest player is Skaven, which is kind of crazy. So when Chris hit somebody, it really, 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 really hurt. Average matches played is 13. Some of this is, again, skewed by not playing your last 3 games and those players living a little bit longer, but still, product of the number of players have lost is pretty significant here. Very balanced team overall. Just move the ball very efficiently. MVP goes to Otto Trick. Not a lot of great choices here, but 4 touchdowns, 6 passes, 6 catches, 19 players removed. Just did the most. Not that a lot of people on this team did a lot, and there's a lot of, you know, churn, so it's hard to say. But it'd have to go to a Vampire because they're the ones that actually made it, and then he just did the most by a lot. By a lot. Was in most of the games, too. It's kind of crazy. I actually thought it was funny that a Thrall was a Thrall with almost no SPP. 1 touchdown was the player that managed to stay in all of Chris's games, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. This means this piece never missed next game. Now, part of that actually makes a little bit of sense because if with Bloodlust, you have a good chance of removing your own piece in a non-permanent fashion. So maybe that's part of it. I don't track players closely enough to care. So, whatever. Let's move on. We're going to talk about Skaven now. Our overall champion, winner of the season. A lot of things here. I'm really fascinated by how this team turned out. And this final screen is a really good showing for kind of how it looked. This column did not help just about at all. At all. The averages and the percentages caught up with all of our 7 Armor Belly teams, but Jessup definitely ate a lot of dirt. Let's look at some numbers because that's the fun thing. That's why we're doing this. Most touchdowns scored. Not too surprising with the Skaven team. Only beat out Chaos by 2, which is kind of surprising. Came in second for moving the ball around, except for running, where he's first. Again, Skaven, not too surprising. More running than throwing kind of surprised me a little bit. If we look at the average, though, still pretty consistent. A little more running than passing, though. Chris is actually more balanced with his offensive potential, but whatever. Not everybody is. There's not enough forage to really make that work, so whatever. Second highest kills in the league. Blows my mind. Can't get over it. Freaking Skaven, man. 98 players removed. Just phenomenal. Posted up so many injuries. Drives you crazy to have that be so much better than me, but whatever. Got tackled a fair amount, which makes sense. He dodged out more. Didn't tackle very much. Makes sense. He wasn't really marking players that often. Gave up a lot of casualties, though. Highest number of casualties removed. When you're tying a vampire player, right, for the number of casualties you have, things are not going well. 150 KOs, this is a number where I was like, no way, that can't be right. But when you factor in that, oh no, it can't be right. There's an 8 there. Haha, math. Looking things over. Okay, that changes things a little bit. Not by a lot, though. 78 KOs is still a lot. Again, when you're closer in on vampire territory, as Mark was, you're not having a good time. 152 players lost. That is crazy. Absolutely crazy. Again, only player that had more players lost is a team where on a 1-6 for your 4 best players, you have to potentially hurt one of your own people. Crazy how much damage this team took. And then the fact that he managed to win is a testament to how really, really fast and how really, really fast in a relatively slow league can be a big deal. Pretty good amount of drive efficiency as well. Second best in the league. Ton of money, actually, overall. Top 5, but considering that we have a tie for 3rd, I guess you could say top 4, whatever. Averages don't change much of anything, I think. Nope, still 2nd overall there. Yeah, I don't know. Just this number blows my mind. An average of 7 players. 7 players ate the dirt in a Jessup game. That's crazy. And he gave up a touch. That's the other thing I should mention. He gave a lot of touchdowns. 21 touchdowns given up is top 3 for most given up. Average of 1 a game, which means that he had to score a lot of touchdowns to win those games. And Jessup season is kind of a product of losing fairly early on and then winning when it counts. That's really what matters when you get to any kind of playoff setup. Look at this. 7 dead players, tied for Mark for most dead players. But actually removed for a number of players as well. Average of 12 matches played. It's kind of interesting, not interesting, but it kind of makes sense that the higher your armor value goes, the more matches you have. But the 7 armor value teams hovering at the exact same number is pretty hilarious. And yeah, Jessup scored so many touchdowns that his ratio of touchdowns scored for giving up is good. So there we go. Let's see here. MVP, that's what we talked about now. MVP goes to Hogwash Redux. Not too surprising here. 11 touchdowns. Part of this is Jessup not sharing his ball around. Like Poppycock should not be a 0 SPP wonder. Just should not be. Hogwash Redux, 11 touchdowns, and got a casualty. That's good enough for me. This team lives and dies by ability to score fast, and that's what he did. And the number of like sons of and juniors and juniors and the thirds and the youngers and Redux, just those players fell fast, but he got really good rolls for the most part. Like, let's take a quick look at the surviving players, right? Rat Ogre had a double. This Storm Vermin here got a plus strength and a double. Guard Piece here got a double. The plus agility here. I mean, this is after, by the way, losing a plus strength, plus agility gunner runner with another one that had a mutation, and a Rat Ogre previously that had a doubles roll. Like, Jessup's rolls were crazy, and that's part of what helped this team do really well. But I think the biggest thing is being fast, being able to move the ball, and Jessup played very, very well when it counted. Like I've been saying, winning when it matters is important. Like here, this 1, 2, 3 games in a row won. That's a good thing. Win your last 3 games, you're gonna win the season. I don't know. I'm fascinated by how Jessup's season went because he was not looking good. He looked pretty good early on, and then things went real south, and then he came back in a really dramatic way. His team really brought itself up quickly, and I think part of that is rolling very well on the winnings table, able to replace players. But Jessup definitely skirted having not a lot of money in his treasury for a long time. So worked out, and yeah, congratulations to the shenanigans. But crazy season, honestly. Just phenomenal rolls across the board. And I don't really know what I can say about that. All right. Only a couple teams left here. We're going to plow through these pretty quickly. So, Undead team. I don't know. I'm curious to see how Zach would have done if he'd had more experience going in, because the first like 4 games for Zach, he was still really struggling with rules and the UI and a lot of the things. So I'm interested to see how his Pierce 3 ended up, by the way, in case you forgot. I'm interested to see how this team would have done had he not had those early games. But Undead, nothing really spectacular. Did a fair amount of removal, came in 3rd for overall players removed. 3rd highest in casualties, and a solid number of KOs will definitely do that. Didn't give up a lot of casualties. Didn't give up a fair number of KOs, but not that many. To come in 3rd for Lost. I mean, high armor value pieces will do that, but they're not that high armor valued, so it's kind of impressive, honestly. Didn't defend very well. Part of this is being slow, and part of this is just to be new at the game. You don't really know what to do. Rolled way more money than he needed. Once again, a team with about half of his winnings still on the table. Just didn't need them. It was fine. And that's with the 4-3 roll. Cool. Okay. Let's keep going here. Averages don't really change much of anything, I think. Loses and removal on an average basis. Yeah, nothing really changes the averages here. Looking at dead, 3 players dead, 2nd for fewest players dead. That's pretty good. Average match length of 14.64. This is a good product of just regeneration doing a thing, and the armor value being not that high. But I think regeneration definitely helped a little bit if you look at the stats here. You know, the players that were in there did well. Mummies stuck in there. Zombies stuck in there. I mean, for the most part, it's like the ghouls, which are hired relatively late. Zombies, or a skeleton that was hired after a necromancer raise. But for the most part, the core of this team, like you look at it, most of these people have, like, it's a big jump from 15 to 20, and then these players were really dragging it down. And these are just new pieces, so that's probably part of it. Yeah. MVP here. MVP went to Chop of the Hut. Not a lot of choices here. Not a lot of touchdowns were scored. Part of this, by the way, is losing one of his tackle guard whites right after he got guard, which sucks. And the other options being Jigsaw, who didn't really do a lot. Usain Bolt, who didn't really get going. Finals did okay, but honestly, it's the same thing with Smiley, right? 26 pieces of removal, probably the biggest thing. I think the other story for this team would be the ghouls didn't get anywhere. They're all level 2 for the most part. This one's level 1. This one's, I mean, these pieces are kind of close to level 3, but they didn't really get that far. And some of that is having overall not very many touchdowns, which is the highest source of CPU, 2nd lowest number of touchdowns scored. You know, and then not getting a fair amount of casualties, but not a ton, and then having some of those pieces removed. So, I don't know. Meter Maid also eating a mind-numbing 6 MVPs. I think what gets me the most about Meter Maid eating 6 MVPs, by the way, is it's 1 SPP away from level 4, right? And didn't do anything else. No passing, no touchdowns, no casualties. KO'd some people, but that's it. This piece didn't do anything except eat MVPs. And that, I mean, that's 30 SPP. That could have definitely made these pieces bigger. So it's slightly bad luck. It's also hilariously great luck. I love it. Okay, let's talk about our last team here, and then we'll talk about some overall league themes, and we'll try to wrap this video up before it gets any longer. Orville had a little better season than he did last season, I think, but not by a ton. I don't know. I think early build choices were kind of a problem for Orville. Maybe when he was talking to me, he said he anticipated having more rerolls because he forgot that he wouldn't be going against higher team value things, giving him inducements like you have in the single player when he was practicing a lot. And then just some unfortunate injuries. I love seeing the 3 lines of red. It is crazy. You know, just some unfortunate injuries and then not a lot of money. I think that's the biggest story for Orville's team, honestly, is he did okay, but he didn't get the money. So let's look at the numbers here. 18 touchdowns is not a lot for an elf team. I mean, he's the best of the bottom 4, but that's not saying too much when you're sharing that territory with an undead team, a chaos dwarf team, and a vampire team. Elfie, though, Orville was very, very elfy. First place for all the passing stuff. Almost there on the running. 2 squares, and he would have had it. Not a lot of removal, which isn't too surprising. You're playing elf ball against a bunch of hitty teams. Not a big problem there. Actually, and this really surprised me, is Orville actually the 3rd fewest casualties given up in the league. And I think the part of this here is Orville ate a lot of KOs instead. 8 armor value is pretty good, but when you get hurt, he just got KO'd more than he got casualties, which is kind of lucky, but not so much, which we'll explore a little bit more here. 130 players lost, so that's kind of where it is, right? You don't have many casualties, but the KOs make up for that. So the plus side for Orville is his players did pretty well at not getting too badly hurt, but they still got hurt. 3rd touchdown scored against 2. When you're losing that many players, you can't defend very well, especially when everybody's bigger than you. These things happen, basically. But this is the number I want to focus on. Lowest in the game by far. An average of 39,000 per game. That is not enough to replace these players. Like, if you're not familiar with Dark Elves, or didn't pay much attention, they're very, very expensive. Blitzers are 100. Your linemen are 70. Your Witch Elves are 110. I mean, the runners are 70? No, the runners are 80, right? These are, no, it's 2 skills, so yeah, they're 80. Yeah. It's an expensive team. And when you're losing players like Witch Elves, you aren't hiring multiple Witch Elves. When you're losing players like Blitzers, you know, or you're delaying hiring your 4th Blitzer for a long time and they don't level up, bad things happen. You can't, when you're losing players significantly, you're not going to be able to replace them, you know, even if you fire them, right? If you don't have the money to replace them, you can't build. If you're just you're barely treading water, you're not going to be able to develop the team as a roster. 12 players is a pretty good number for elf teams to have if these are all like level 3. And I will say they are almost all level 3, which is scary, but they could be more. Like Orville lost a level 3 witch elf, which Mighty Blow here, pretty awesome, but lost, I want to say, some pretty quality linemen in there as well. So yeah, I mean, just unfortunate things. Kind of similar to Mark's situation too, where he lost some key pieces when he didn't need to, or didn't want to, rather. If we look at the some averages, not a lot changes here whatsoever. Yeah, nothing really new, no information there, although they are fun numbers to look at. If we look at his deaths, tied for the 2nd for the fewest deaths sustained, and actually has a fair number of matches per player. And I think the part of that is when he lost a player, it was like the same player over and over again. Like this poor bastard, basically. Lyman was his player that was in there every single time. And just, you know, when his players stayed in, they stayed in. The ones that got hurt over and over and over again. MVP for this team I gave to Ornas. Ornas basically, you know, let's look at the numbers here. Was in almost all the games, 3 touchdowns, fair amount of passing, not as much as, say, Enlin, but he's not a runner. And still managed to post up 6 casualties. I mean, you can make the argument that Enlin might have done more for this team, but I think this Dauntless Dodge choices worked out pretty well for him. So I think overall, probably the best player on this team. But yeah, I mean, Orville's basic story is just not enough money. When you don't have enough money, it's really hard to play an expensive elf team. So those are team reviews. Let's start talking about some league fun facts, if you will. And then we'll talk about some other things here. We'll start with things I've alluded to, which is Skull Mountain. Skull Mountain is what I affectionately call our ridiculous number of injuries, which, if you look at the statistics, is not actually that significant. On a percentage-wise, we should have more, but total of 35 kills. Everybody contributed somebody. Andrew almost didn't, but then did right at the end. It just got bigger. Like, there's some huge spikes as you go along, but for the most part, yeah, just bad times were had by all. I don't know, I'm trying to think of anything else I can really talk about. I mean, this is more kills than we've had. This is a longer season than we've had, but it's still a kind of scary amount of deaths. everyone having kind of average armor value, I think, is part of that. Let's look at Casualty Tower, which is its complement. Casualty Tower is kind of ridiculous. So total number of casualties for us, for casualties suffered, I'm trying to get the exact number here. 431. 431 casualties. Everybody contributing reasonably so, as we tell us. Chris really pushing us along by injuring his own players. But yeah, give it a fair amount. And actually, that was kind of an interesting thing for me. I started tracking I started calculating the percentage of casualties that were caused by hits. This tracks things like Orville's war with the ground, which Orville fought the ground a lot. 77% of our casualties were caused by hits. A lot of that is dragged down by vampires biting their own people. But yeah, just a lot of injuries. Kind of average armor value would do that overall. Let's flip over to some numbers so you can look at those. Total of 164 touchdowns, which is cool. Whole crap ton of money. Average of 1 touchdown a game. So like I said, a lot of 1-0s. Yeah, 2 casualties a game, pretty normal, I would say. Average money, 51,000 per game. So look at Orville's team, right? Way below an average team expected to see. This is not a this is calculated based on the based on this number, which is the total of basically taking the averages of everybody across the number of games played. So this is literally what a default average coach could expect to get overall. So it's not a average of the numbers per se. It's like a, I don't remember the name for it. Whatever, you get the idea. Let's see here. Other fun league facts. My prediction accuracy, garbage this season. Like, I barely beat season 1. 46.25%, not so great. I don't know, anything else here? Anything else I want to talk about? Not really. I mean, I think it was a really good season. I think the format worked really well. We're going to replicate it next season as well. Just very, very bloody. 80 games total. Awesome. Great. A lot of them are recorded too. You can definitely watch them all. Let's take a look at this section here, which is our overall team performance. This is basically a weighting for who statistically did the best. And luckily, they all kind of worked out fine. Chaos Dwarfs, our statistical best team overall. This is, you know, when you win a lot of categories like resiliency and you win them hard, it kind of works out that way. Second best goes to Chaos. And then third best goes to Mark. So pretty interesting. Both these teams, or all 3 of those teams, are in the top 3. So I think it's a pretty good reflection. I do think it's, and this is what I was talking about with Jessup, scoring touchdowns when he needed to. Actually, I mean, he's not that far off. He's the 4th best statistical performance overall. I'm second worst again. God, that's embarrassing as always. But yeah, so it wasn't that far off. But interesting to see that the team that won everything wasn't necessarily as wasn't the overall winner statistically. I mean, that goes back to kind of how scale and bullshit works. When it works great. When it doesn't work great. All right, let's do one last perusal for the old Hall of Fame, and then we'll wrap this up. Most experienced player goes to Abed, who, by the way, that bold category earlier means he's our league MVP. I think he's definitely the best player overall. Highest amount of SVP, most game impact, I think, overall. Phenomenal player. Huge, huge, huge. Best score goes to Hogwash Redux with 11 touchdowns scored. It's a pretty solid record. Best passing is Hui, which is the thrower. 27 passes total. Interceptions here, only 2. Hopefully next season we'll have more. Most violent player, not surprised to see Abed here beating everybody out by 7. 7, it's almost a level 3 player of SPP and injuries alone. Best runner, Ocelot Atlas pulled it away. I think the Dean had a higher number, but this isn't tracking dead players. So congratulations to Radek for walking away with the best running. Actually, that's, well, whatever. Leave it. Best run in terms of yards, Hui threw very far. Survivor, kind of interesting here, actually, because these matter a little bit because you can see the players that played the most. Blarney made all 22 games. Like I said, everybody had a player that played all their games, which is cool. Best killing, Shirley, ruler of Skull Mountain with 3 total. And like I've been saying, this list kind of trails down quite a bit. Best receiver, Hogwarts Redux, not too surprising, as that most touchdowns. Cool. Like I said, really good season. I'm really happy with how everything went. We're going to start it up pretty soon. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next season.